Hey guys, I hope by week number 2 you're getting into the routine of checking the weekly notes and checking for videos and finding your way through the course and settling in. So this video right here is an introduction to section 2.1, which is how to create a frequency table. So the whole point of really what we're doing in this video is we have a list of data. This is a small data set, but just think about how this would work for a large data set. And if you have a huge, large set of numbers, we can't really do a whole lot with it with just having the numbers sitting there listed. So we kind of put it together in a table and group it. So then we can make predictions, we can figure out where most of the data lies, things like that. So what we're going to do right here is create a frequency table with 5 classes. And this data is for average ages for 20 randomly selected students in a stats class. Okay, so if we want to make a table, we know this part is always given to us how many classes. So we're trying to fit this data into 5 classes, so we really have to figure out what are our limits for each class. You know, who's going to fall in the ages, what to what are going to fall in the first class, things like that. So the first thing we're going to do right here is we are going to find the range. How far apart is this data? Oops. Okay, so the range is always going to be the max minus the min. It's really just how spread apart is this data. So in this one, I think I found the max to be 45. So that's the max right there. And then the min was, the youngest person in this data set was 19. So our range right here is 26, which means this data is spread apart a span of 26. Okay, so that's what we have to fit into 5 classes. So it kind of makes sense for the next thing for us to do is to take that 26 and divide it evenly into 5 classes. And what we're actually finding right now is the class width. Okay, so the class width is really just the range over the number of classes. Okay, so we said our range was 26. We're going to divide it into 5 classes. Okay, so it doesn't come out whole, and that actually sometimes works to our advantage because it comes out to be a 5.2. So I don't really want to have that to be my class width. I want my class width to be whole. So I have to round this up. It's got to go up to 6. Okay, it can't go down because if I do and I use 5, when I start making my class limits, I will end up not having a spot for that 45. My class limits will end too early. So our class width in this one, I usually just abbreviate it CW, is 6. Okay, so that is how far apart each of the limits will be. Okay, so I'm going to flip the slide and start building our frequency table. So make sure you jot this down, that what do we have as our class width. I won't have the data on there, but I'm going to use it to fill in my table. As I'm going to actually start, my third step is to build my class limits. Sorry, my handwriting's getting worse as I go. Okay, so if our class width is 6, what I want to do is I want to start at the minimum and add my class width. Okay, so let me show you on the table. I had this table set up. This is what you would draw for yourself if you're making one on your own. So my lowest class limit is 19 because that's my lowest value that was in that data set. And here's the thing you want to be careful of. My class width is from here to here, and here to here, and here to here. Okay, my class width is not horizontally; it's vertically, which means I have to do 19 plus 6, and I get my next lower class limit, which is 25. So I'm building all the lower ones. 25 plus 6 is 31. 31 plus 6. So we're adding 6. We're adding all these class widths till I get to my end of till I've got 5 classes built. Okay, and then 43. Whoops, I'm just going to do that one in blue. So those are all my lower class limits. That's what I always want to build first. And watch, I go back and fill in. So the first class is going to be everyone that's 19 to 24. I have 24 because the next class starts at 25, so that one class above must end at 24. So I built all my lower ones, and now I go back and fill in my upper ones. So this class must end at 30. This class must end at 36. This class must end at 42. And the last class, everything should be consistent here. So this should be a 48. Okay, because if you look at all the lower limits are 6 apart and all the upper limits are 6 apart. Okay, so my whole graph should be, my whole table, everything should be the same width apart. So once I've built those, once I've got all my limits, then I find out how many pieces of data how many in each class. And that's my frequency. So that's your frequency right there. So this is what is usually the most tedious and takes the most time. So I went and did it ahead of time. But you just really have to sit with the data and count how many people are between 19 and 24, how many people between 25 and 30, and just do a little tally. So I found there to be 10 in this class, 2 in this class, 6 in this, 1 and 1. And a quick check is if I take this means sum. The sum of all the frequencies should be 20 because there was 20 pieces of data. So then our last step is really to kind of, we extend our table. Right now we have a basic frequency table, but we extend our table to include our midpoints. Okay, and I'm going to fill them in a second. Our relative frequency and our cumulative frequency. And I'll show you those. So midpoints are exactly what you would think. They're just the midpoint of the class limit. So if I took an average of 19 and 24, if I'm on that first class right here, and I average those, figure out the midpoint of it, that's what this is. So that midpoint is 21.5. If I do it for the next one, I get 27.5. And you notice those midpoints are 6 apart, and that's supposed to happen. So when I average 31 and 36, I get 33.5, and I know that makes sense because that is 6 from 27.5. And then likewise, 39.5 and 45.5. So if I did this right, these should all be 6 apart. That's my class width. So if you end up with some midpoints that are whole and some that are 0.5, there's something wrong with your class limits. Okay, I'm going to come back to boundaries in 1 second. My relative frequency is really the percentage that falls in each class. So in the first class, my frequency was 10, but it was really out of 20. It makes more sense for us to look at it as a percentage. So that is really 50%. So I'm running into that other class. Sorry about that. So my relative frequency in there is 0.5. The next class, 2 out of 20, my relative frequency is 0.10, which means 10% of the people ranged from ages 25 to 30. The next one comes out to be 30% because it's 6 out of 20. And then 0.05 and 0.05. So if I did this right, and this one I didn't have to round any of these. If these don't come out nice and, terminating decimals, sometimes you have to round these to the nearest hundredth or so. But they should come out to be the sum of my relative frequencies should be about 1. It won't be perfect if you had to round. Okay, and then the cumulative, that 50 was still part of that, sorry. The cumulative frequency is the sum of that class and any classes above. Okay, so cumulative frequency, the frequency of the first class is 10, and there's no classes above it, so my total frequency is still 10. But then my next class has a frequency of 2, but I'm going to add the 10 that was before it. So my cumulative frequency for the second class is 12. These are the actual cumulative frequencies. So then so on and so on. The next one has 6, but I'm going to add the 12 from before. So far I have 18 people accounted for. Okay, by the end of the 4th class, my cumulative frequency is 19. And then my last class is 20. So that makes sense. This right here should be N, which is the total pieces of data. Okay, and then the last part of this, boundaries, you really only use them when you're going to do an ogive and you're labeling the x-axis. But the boundaries, just take your class limits and they extend them out 0.5 each way to make it wider, really by 1, because you extend it to lower by 0.5 and upper. So if I take 19, it means I go down to 18.5, and then this will go up to 24.5. I'm sorry, this is squeezing in there. And then the next one would start at 24.5 and go up to 30.5. So I'm just adding and subtracting a half to make this wider on both directions. So then 30.5 to 36.5, 36.5 to 42.5, and 42.5 to 48.5. Okay, so again, those are really just used for labeling. So this is really, although a little messy, this is a full extended frequency table. Okay, so hopefully that helps you with this week's material, and you'll see another video on how to take this table and make a couple different kinds of graphs.